Happening now on Grid Tonight. Yesterday, after months of speculation, Nyck de Vries officially lost his AlphaTauri Formula One seat, and he's been replaced with Daniel Ricciardo. Was Red Bull unfair to sack de Vries so soon in his rookie season, and could Ricciardo put himself in the mix for the second seat at Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen? Simon Pagenaud wasn't cleared to race this weekend in Toronto, so Meyer Shank Racing is replacing him with their star sports car ace Tom Blomqvist. Could this be an audition for a future IndyCar seat? With Kevin Harvick retiring at the end of the year, Anheuser-Busch is leaving Stewart-Haas Racing for Trackhouse Racing and Ross Chastain in 2024. How much potential does this new partnership have? Hello to all our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. As you can see, we have a full house tonight. I'm Cubby Lambert from the Podium Finish. With me, Ben Snyder, Jonathan Fiel from the Racing Experts, and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat and ask any questions you have. I already have a comment in the chat right there. Hello to you. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. And with that said, I'll throw it over to Ben with our top story this evening. Some really big silly season news in Formula One.
Thank you, Kobe. Some big news indeed. After months of speculation, Nyck de Vries has been dropped from his AlphaTauri seat in Formula One by Red Bull. This all started a while back when rumors emerged that Daniel Ricciardo visited the AlphaTauri factory in Faenza for a seat fitting that could eventually see him replace the struggling rookie driver. Yesterday, we got the official confirmation when it was announced that Ricciardo would join AlphaTauri for the remainder of the 2023 season on loan from Red Bull. Ricciardo's first race back will be the upcoming Hungarian Grand Prix. After originally planning to take a sabbatical from Formula One this year, Ricciardo said he's stoked to be back on track with the Red Bull family. AlphaTauri principal Franz Tost welcomed Ricciardo back to the team and said the whole organization would benefit from his experience in Formula One. Tost also thanked de Vries for his contributions to AlphaTauri and wished him the best in the future. Getting a late start to his F1 career, many people were excited about what de Vries could do when he finally made it to the pinnacle of motorsport. Despite winning the Formula 2 championship and becoming a Formula E world champion, it felt like de Vries had been snubbed by F1 until he got this big break. Last year, de Vries made his F1 debut with Williams in the Italian Grand Prix, substituting for an ill Alex Albon and scoring points in his very first F1 race. This raised his profile, which ultimately led to AlphaTauri signing him for the full 2023 season. However, his rookie year has been a major struggle as he scored no points and has been unable to match teammate Yuki Tsunoda, coupled with an AlphaTauri car that has not been very effective. After the first 10 races, the Red Bull family moved on swiftly and decided not to have de Vries finish out the rest of the year. Photo on your screen was taken by Peter Fox from Getty Images. Kobe, did Red Bull give up on de Vries too soon, and is it unfair to make him a scapegoat for what's been a down year for AlphaTauri across the board?
To be honest, Ben, I'm not really sure how you can write off a driver after just 10 races during the season. He's a Formula One rookie. I understand, he's 28 years old, lot older, spent multiple seasons in Formula 2 and, in seasons in Formula E as well. But still, Formula One is different compared to any other racing series in the world. And I think that when you're a rookie driver, you certainly need time. But I know this is what have you done for me lately. And it seems like rookies aren't given enough time to develop as drivers, and I think de Vries also dealt a bad hand with the AlphaTauri, which could very well be the worst car on the grid this year. So I'm not really sure what more he could have done with that. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda hasn't really done much better than him, but it's still been quite a struggle for Nyck de Vries. It's super unfortunate to see him become the latest casualty of the Red Bull driver program, which is one of the cruelest programs in all of motorsports, it seems. And I brought this up on the new social media app Threads to show you how cruel this is. They didn't even let the guy run his home Grand Prix, the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. Like that, to me, that's just cold. And I remember when the rumors were coming out that de Vries might get dropped. The rumors were saying that he had until his home Grand Prix to get it together, or he could get dropped. But Red Bull went ahead and got rid of him before he could even go race in the Netherlands. So I think that's extremely cold. If they wanted to do justice by de Vries and wanted to move on, I think it would have been nicer to at least let him run his last race at home at Zandvoort and then just be done with him. I think that would have been the courteous thing to do, but Red Bull couldn't even let him have that moment. I'm sure when Nyck de Vries found out the moment he was going to be a Formula One driver, every driver on the grid, their first home Grand Prix is a moment you're never going to forget. And I'm sure as soon as he signed the ink with AlphaTauri, he's thinking, this is going to be one of the biggest celebrations for me, racing at home in front of my home fans. And now Nyck de Vries is never gonna be able to do that, and it's just so super unfortunate to see how his entire situation has unfolded with him. And got a comment in the chat room from Adam Limmery, agreeing and said, "You feel so bad for Nyck de Vries. He's a great driver with loads of talent." Yes, it's certainly a super sad situation to see the young Dutchman so out of Formula One so soon.
Well, first of all, good evening, guys. Thank you to Jonathan for tagging in for me last week, and he stuck around while I tagged back in for Josh, who's taking a couple of weeks off. So I hope Josh is doing well. Did they give up on De Vries too soon? Almost certainly. 10 races is nothing. We're similar but different situation. We've got 3 rookies. Logan Sargent really hasn't done a great deal in a similarly performing Williams, although Alex Albon was very good in it over the last couple of weeks, especially this weekend at Silverstone. It just smacks of some, I don't know, as Kobe mentioned, the Red Bull driver program has just been like this for the last few years. Obviously, we saw the Max Verstappen and Danny Kvyat swap around a couple of years ago, Gasly and Albon as well. After that, it's a shame, real shame for Nyck, as you mentioned, Ben. Double world champion in Formula E, Formula 2 champion. The guy is talented. He's no smuck driving around there at the back of the field. He will surely pick up a drive, more than likely in WEC. I would feel probably one of the hypercar teams would like to have him as part of their lineup for next year. But real shame for Nyck, who, yes, he's been off the pace of Tsunoda, but Tsunoda in his first season kind of was in a similar vein of results. And after the halfway point and the summer break, he did then become, picked up the baton and got going. It's a bit like soccer managers, isn't it? You just don't get time at the start of a season. If you've lost a good chunk of games, if you can get sacked before Christmas in the European leagues, it's kind of feels a little bit like the same like that. He just really hasn't got time to get his feet under the table, get comfortable with the car and the team and the surroundings, and put an effort in to show that he's deserving of the seat. It's a real shame for him.
Matt, it's funny you bring that up because the soccer managers here in the States are the same way. I'm a Philadelphia Union fan, and I can tell you we got off to a slow start with our soccer team this year, and Jim Curtin's been the MLS coach of the year 2 of the last 3 years, and they still want him sacked anyway. So maybe that's just Philly sports fans, maybe that's soccer fans, but I get what you're saying there with that analogy. Iron Kong 26 says De Vries got a raw deal. Yuki ain't that good either, but he's safe. We'll get to that in just a moment. Rod Brown says, I think Ricciardo has mates mob looking after him, seems to get a lot of free passes. All right, fair enough. And behind the mic, Matthew Owens says, I find this terrible and honestly unprofessional to give a young rookie half a season to prove himself is wildly unrealistic. I hate it. Matthew, I agree 100%. And I'm going to even take it a step further here. This deeply, deeply bothers me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Nyck de Vries is a better, more proven Formula One driver than Daniel Ricciardo. But I am going to tell you that Nyck de Vries was a rookie in what, to the points that, we all have made so far, arguably the worst car AlphaTauri has put forward in the AlphaTauri era. Maybe there were a couple of cars that Toro Rosso built in the 2010s that weren't, very good either. But, I don't know what more you could have expected him to do. And it's not like, if you want proof of that, it's not like Yuki Tsunoda is bringing home a bag of points every weekend. He's got 2 points all year. So he's really struggled as well to get the car up to speed. The entire team's having a down year. I don't think you can fault Nyck de Vries for having 0 points after 10 races, just as I don't think you can fault Logan Sargent for having 0 points. He got very close at Silverstone coming in P11, so he's knocking on the door. But, we're hearing these rumors that maybe Mercedes want to slide Mick Schumacher into that Williams seat and kick Logan Sargent out after half a year. And that obviously we can be biased here in the United States, our first F1 driver in 8 years. But, I just looking at it objectively as well, how can you only give a rookie half a season to prove himself and get up to speed in what's certainly one of the worst 2 cars on the grid, maybe the worst overall, given the pace that Williams showed this weekend at Silverstone. So it really bothers me. And I understand why they made the change that they made, putting Daniel Ricciardo in, and we'll get into what's going on in the senior Red Bull team here in just a moment as well. But to kick a proven F2 champion and Formula E champion out of his seat after just 10 races, it really does not sit well with me. And to be honest, neither has a lot of what the Red Bull program has done over the years, making these driver changes mid-season. It's kind of become a trend that we've seen every so often with these two teams here that they have. It seems like nobody, I guess Max Verstappen's safe for obvious reasons, but other than that, nobody's safe in the long term if you're part of the Red Bull family, and that's really, really unfortunate to see. All right, does anybody else have do we want to bring Jonathan in here, or does anybody else want to follow up?
Yeah, I guess I could say.
I think we lost your audio there, Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan, we can't hear your audio. Yeah, we still can't hear you. Okay. Fix.
That might be better.
There you go, guys. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Read out. Go
We
ahead.
got you now.
There you go. Sorry about that. I was just gonna say, it's really interesting because Daniel Ricciardo was kind of in the same spot last year where, it seemed like he was on his way out. Of course, Oscar Piastri replacing him at McLaren, and now you see a rookie who doesn't even have a Grand Prix win, doesn't even have a Grand Prix point under his belt, getting kind of the shaft now. So it's very unfortunate to see. But I think this is a good opportunity for the team to really have someone come in, shake it down, shake their cars down. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Now the mic's
Just
working.
one quick point before Ben continues. Don't forget Monza. We mentioned Nyck came in for the Il Alex Albon, scored points on his F1 debut. He was the next big thing at that point. All the whole F1 stories were about where would Nyck de Vries end up. And then there was the Colton Herta thing. I bet Colton saw that news yesterday and had a wry smile that he didn't end up. I know he's not having a great season in IndyCar, granted, but he may have had a wry smile that he didn't end up getting the seat over the winter at AlphaTauri alongside Tsunoda.
Yeah, and that was a car, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, but Latifi scored a single point all year last season in that car. De Vries had one opportunity, and he picked up a couple of Monza. Granted, that's been one of Williams' better tracks over the last couple of years. But I agree with you. I think Colton Herta is maybe breathing a sigh of relief that he didn't get involved with this Red Bull program, just as another American, Scott Speed, did many years ago here. Iron Kong 26 also saying Alex Palou should beware seeing this. Well, we'll see. I mean, I guess that would be the McLaren family that he would be rumored to maybe become a part of in the coming seasons, and maybe they'd be a little bit more forgiving. Maybe they wouldn't, but we'll just have to wait and see. I wouldn't leave the situation that Palou's in right now. If I were him, he seems to be doing very, very well with his current situation in Ganassi in the IndyCar series. So we'll see what happens with him there as well. Apologize, guys. Usually I'm hosting the Encore show and I toss it back to Brandon, so I was just kind of waiting for somebody to pick up the slack there. But we'll move on here to the next part of the top story and talk about De Vries departing the team and who's coming in to replace him. A way more experienced driver in Daniel Ricciardo. Now, he's made 232 starts in Formula One. He's an 8-time Grand Prix winner, and his most recent win, funnily enough, just talking about McLaren, came with the 2021 Italian Grand Prix. His only victory as a McLaren driver, the only McLaren driver to win in the last decade. Driving for AlphaTauri is a bit of a homecoming for Ricciardo. He drove for the team in 2012 and 2013 when they ran under the name Toro Rosso. In 2014, he got promoted to the senior Red Bull team where he raced for 5 years. Now he returns to a much different AlphaTauri team that's having a down year, as we just mentioned. So expectations will be super low. They're last in the constructors, and at this point, you'd think the 2024 car is at the top of their minds in what appears to be a lost season. The photo on your screen is taken by Mark Thompson from Getty Images. Matt, we'll start with you this time. Despite this year not being what AlphaTauri had hoped for, can Ricciardo's presence provide a much-needed spark in the morale department the rest of the season?
Well, social media is a buzz that he's going to get on the podium next weekend, of course, in his return, or at least score a good hatful of points. It's not going to happen, I'm afraid, even though he has won at the Hungaroring in his previous Red Bull life. I don't think it's going to happen next weekend, should I say. Points, maybe. Well, he might get rain at Hungary. We often do. He's very good in slippery conditions. But as we've mentioned, Tsunoda's not been pulling up trees at all anyway in that car, as you mentioned, Ben. He's only got 2 points to his name through the same amount of races as De Vries, including a sprint race, of course, at the Red Bull Ring a couple of weeks ago. But, I mean, they're one of those teams that are in that kind of Haas and Williams bracket of needing other teams ahead of them to slip up or fall off the road or break down for them to end up having a good result. We've got the summer break coming up in a couple of weeks. We've got Hungary and then straight to Spa at the end of the month before we get to the summer break. He's got 2 weeks to get his feet under the table and back up to full race fitness, I guess. He was in the Red Bull at Silverstone yesterday doing a test, which is when he got given the word by the sounds of things. And Nyck de Vries was not at that test. Helmut Marko was and phoned Nick and gave him the bad news over the phone, is what I've heard. So Daniel was obviously given the word in the morning, and we got to hear it yesterday afternoon. So what will he do? Probably a similar job to what Tsunoda has been doing through the season. Rod says if he runs 12th, it's a victory for him. So he's got a great opportunity. Yeah, I don't disagree, but there's no points for 12th place. So does that matter? More about where cars are running in portions of races when we get to hots and nots later on. But well, let's see. If he comes in and does amazingly, then of course the fire of social media will be lit further.
Yeah, I certainly think that, Ricciardo coming in, this could be a real test for AlphaTauri, like I mentioned, to see just, where their equipment is at and what they need to improve. I mean, obviously, in F1, once you get started in a season, you're behind the 8 ball. I mean, it's pretty hard to get yourself out. But I think Ricciardo being able to get in the car, it's going to be kind of a refresher as well for the team, kind of getting somebody who knows the inner workings of Red Bull and everything that goes on there. So I think this will be a good opportunity, and it'll be interesting to see if this leads to anything else for Ricciardo.
Yeah, we have a comment here in the chat room saying that you feel bad for Nyck de Vries, but love to see Daniel Ricciardo back on the track. Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo certainly been a fan favorite in Formula One for a number of years, dating all the way back since his very first start in the pinnacle of motorsports, and it's been really interesting seeing how this story came to be. I know Nate Saunders, ESPN journalist in Formula One, wrote a really good piece on how this all came down. It started off with what seemed to be a normal Pirelli tire test, which turned into a phone call between Helmut Marko and Christian Horner to see how Daniel was performing, and according to the article, they were blown away that Daniel Ricciardo, that despite all the struggles he's had in his recent years of Formula One, had put together a really great lap time, which would have put him on the front row for the British Grand Prix. But however, in this article, that they said that it like comparing apples to oranges in terms of track condition, because this is the 2024 version of the Pirelli tire compared to the 2023 version that they just raced on last week, and plus the track conditions were a lot different. So they're saying you can't really compare the two, but nonetheless, it was still a very impressive lap from Ricciardo. And also interesting to read that Red Bull thought that he picked up some really bad driving habits compared to last time around when he spent time at Renault and then McLaren. But they feel like that Daniel Ricciardo still can get the job done, and we'll see what he's able to do at AlphaTauri moving forward. I know it's going to be really hard for him to do anything with a really bad car right now that AlphaTauri has. But I think, like you were saying, Ben, in the morale department, he has such this infectious personality, and people really love being around Daniel Ricciardo. So if the car is not going to do anything, if he's not going to be able to do anything with the car, at least the team and everyone at AlphaTauri will enjoy working with him, because he has a good history of being someone who's really good to work with in Formula One.
Again, it's just the principle of not giving a rookie a full season. I don't want people to take this as, me not being happy with Daniel Ricciardo's back in Formula One, because I've been pulling for him to get a seat again, because I think he deserves to be in Formula One at this point in his career still. I think he still has something left to prove. I just didn't want to see it happen like this, but it is what it is now. He's back, and I think you're right, Kobe. He just has such an infectious smile. He's absolutely going to boost the morale over at AlphaTauri. Again, how well is that going to translate to performance on the track? We're just going to have to wait and see. But I think Ricciardo coming back to that team, might lift their spirits a little bit in what's been a pretty down year for them so far. So, I think that's only going to, make things a little bit more positive as they try to work their way through what's been a very difficult season so far. We have a comment in the chat room asking, what do you guys think of Nick's chances of coming back to Formula E? Matt, maybe I could hand that over to you. I certainly would defer to Ed Hunter on that one. I think he could perform well if he did, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's possible. We've got Formula E back this weekend. We'll be talking about it in Pick a Winner later on. It's highly possible. He did very well in LMP2 WEC over the last couple of years running with the Jumbo team before that team folded. I would more than likely see him in a hypercar, either in WEC or in IMSA going forward. There was a picture circulating of him having a coffee with Toto Wolff, who I'm not sure if that's still Nyck's manager. It certainly was Nyck's manager through his F2 and Formula E time. Of course, he drove for Mercedes and won the championship with them in Formula E. So maybe Toto can help point his old steed back in the right direction. And F1 fans in times of yore, remember when Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button were at McLaren? What's that, 12 years ago now? And the Tuned cartoon was out. Nyck de Vries was in Tune because he was going to be the next big thing. And it's all gone badly wrong for him, unfortunately, since he was a cartoon. Well, not all badly wrong, because we've mentioned he's won 2 championships. But let's hope he, as we said before, let's hope he can find his way back onto a world championship grid. I highly like to think that he will.
Yeah, I totally think Nyck de Vries will have a plethora of options out there for him outside of Formula One. You know, been a Formula E world champion. I'm sure there's a lot of Formula E teams who would be very interested in his services. And as you mentioned, Matt, he's also done really well in sports car racing as well. It would not surprise me if we see a WC hypercar team or a IMSA GTP team come calling for his services. And before he got this Formula One opportunity, you remember it seemed like he was going to potentially be in the mix to be a Toyota hypercar driver. So we'll have to see if the connections with Toyota is still there. And also he tested in IndyCar as well. I believe it was for Meyershank Racing during the last off season or the off season before. And I believe he had the quickest time in that test. So maybe a return to Formula E sports cars, a factory deal, or IndyCar could be on the table for Nyck de Vries. I still think that he has a long career ahead of him outside of Formula One, and there's going to be a lot of great places for him to land, for him to continue with his racing career and find some great success. And Rod Brown, I assume that's in reference to the Pirelli tire test was the lap official. It was an unofficial lap of 2024 Pirelli tire test. Don't know what the exact lap time was. I'm not sure if that's out there, but they said it would have put him on the front row for the British Grand Prix. But like I said, apples and oranges, different type of tire, different track conditions, so you can't really compare the two, but still a really good run for Daniel Ricciardo at that test.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch Tuned. Thank you for reminding me of that, Matt. I forgot about that.
Me too.
But we'll move on now, and ironically enough, another former McLaren driver here in Sergio Perez. It's easy to forget that he drove for that team. I guess it was Jensen's replacement, or not Jensen's replacement, Lewis's replacement in 2013. So there you go. But let's talk about Sergio Perez here, because I think this could have a ripple effect to the senior Red Bull team here. As Ricciardo returns to the F1 grid in Hungary, the Red Bull reserve driver may increase the pressure on Checo in the coming weeks. Checo started the year off strong with 2 wins in the first 4 races in Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan. In the first 5 races, he had 4 podiums with a worst finish of 5th place in the Australian Grand Prix, turning around what had been a horrific weekend for him in Melbourne. But when we got to the Monaco Grand Prix, that's when things really started going downhill. In Monte Carlo, he crashed out of Q1, starting last and finishing a disappointing 16th. He didn't make it out of Q2 in Spain, Canada, or Austria, and he also failed to advance out of Q1 during last weekend's British Grand Prix. Meanwhile, his teammate Max Verstappen is continuing to dominate, while Perez struggles at the worst possible time. Now, F1.com's Lawrence Barretto said his sources told him that Ricciardo was very impressive during the Pirelli tire test at Silverstone earlier this week. As we mentioned, it was Ricciardo's first time driving the 2023 Red Bull F1 car, and as Kobe mentioned, based on his lap time, it would have been good enough to put him on the front row for the British Grand Prix alongside Verstappen, whereas Perez qualified 15th in the same car. Photo taken by Mark Thompson from Getty Images. Jonathan, if Ricciardo overachieves in the AlphaTauri and Perez can't shake off his struggles, could Checo be the next driver to get sacked by Red Bull?
You know, as Kobe mentioned earlier, this is a what have you done for me lately game. And really, when you talk about Checo, like, he hasn't done much lately, unfortunately, where, you know, Verstappen's been on fire, winning almost every race and kind of been the default winner of sorts as of lately. Perez just hasn't been there. So I think if Ricciardo can go out and really shine in a car like AlphaTauri. We've been talking all about it's been, the worst car on the grid. It's been terrible. It's been awful. You got the report coming in from the test as well. Yeah, I mean, that definitely puts Perez's feet to the fire. I think he has to perform. He has to show that he's capable to stand up to Verstappen, just like we saw with Rosberg against Hamilton back in 2016. He was able to perform. He was able to stand up. Perez just needs to show more of that, because Ricciardo, I mean, he is about the same age as Perez as well. So it's a very equivalent comparison. And if Ricciardo is showing more than Perez, then I certainly see where Red Bull will be coming from in putting him in.
And it's a crazy world we live in when we're talking about a driver who's currently second in points in a world championship, and we're discussing whether or not he's going to be with the team next year. I'm not sure if they would do another driver swap before the end of the season, because it seems like everything is perfectly fine in the constructors right now. Max can basically, I saw this earlier today that say Max can basically just win the constructors on his own. Doesn't really need Checo at this point, since he's been so dominant. But it's interesting to see the turn here from Daniel Ricciardo when he decided to take a sabbatical from Formula One. He wasn't interested in a seat like this at AlphaTauri. He only wanted to be in a competitive car, and it makes me wonder why Ricciardo took this AlphaTauri seat. I'm thinking the only reason why he took this seat is he sees it as a potential path all the way back up to the top in Red Bull, where he can go out there, compete for podiums again, race wins, compete for the drivers' championship, and all of that. If there wasn't an opportunity for Daniel Ricciardo to potentially go all the way back up to the top to compete with Red Bull Racing, I don't think we see him in this AlphaTauri. See, I think he views this as a way to reprove himself to Helmut Marko, Christian Horner again, that although the last few years of my Formula One career haven't been that great, I'm still the same driver that won races with you before and help you score a lot of points. And so I really think that there's a potential path here for Daniel Ricciardo to get back to where he used to be, towards the top of the Formula One grid. And as for Sergio Perez, it's been really crazy seeing him fall off massively after the first few races of the season. It seems like nothing has gone his way, and to see Max doing what he's doing, continuing to dominate, get pole position after pole position, fast lap after fast lap, race win after race win, while Perez is struggling to do the same thing in that really wonderfully fast car that they have. And if Perez isn't going to improve soon, I'm sure. And Daniel Ricciardo surprises in AlphaTauri would not surprise me if Dr. Helmut Marko decides to move on and sack Perez at the end of the 2023 season. I'm not sure if they do it before the season ends, but who knows? Did we think they would sack Nyck de Vries? I know we heard all the rumors, but with Red Bull these days, and anything is possible. And I know they're kind of dismissing all the claims that Perez's seat is going to be in jeopardy before the end of 2024. But we know nowadays length of contract doesn't really matter. So anything is possible. So Sergio Perez, a lot of pressure on him moving forward for the rest of the season.
Yeah, massive pressure. And if Ricciardo does come in and is a regular point scorer through the end of the season, and Perez's form as it is at the moment, he's racing well, but he's giving himself a lot of work to do, as Ben mentioned, from all these terrible qualifying efforts that he's had over the last 4 or 5 races. So, there was all that talk at the beginning of the year that, Red Bull got the best car, but at least we might have a team-on-team battle for the championship, like back in the Hamilton and Rosberg days at Mercedes, for instance. But it just faded away. And there was a story, I didn't read the story, but there was a story up on motorsport.com today, and the headline was something along the lines of, Perez, I'm not worried about my seat. Well, his outside voice might be saying that, but I think his inside voice might be a little bit worried, especially if Ricciardo does get in and get on scoring some points and putting in some decent performances. If those two get together on track at Hungary during the race or at Spa, then the cameras will be on them, you can be sure, to see what happens. We'll have to see what, as Kobe mentioned, contracts. They can be written as quickly as they can be screwed up and thrown in the bin. So Perez is signed through to the end of next season at the moment. Obviously, we know, as we've talked about, how cutthroat the Red Bull driver program is, and they've got half of the Formula 2 grid sat there waiting potentially to come into one of those two seats. I'm not sure Tsunoda's got much of a life left in him if he doesn't pick up his game, especially when they've not got Honda stickers on the side of the car in a couple of years and they've got Ford ones. So there could be a lot of shuffling going around in the, well, 3 of the 4 Red Bull seats over the next couple of years.
So I will give Checo credit for this. His recovery drives from his poor qualifying efforts have been pretty decent. 4th in Spain, 6th in Canada, 3rd making it back onto the podium in Austria, and then 6th of his past race in Great Britain. So you can give him a little bit of credit for that. Also picked up the fastest lap in Canada, just seen there as well. So he's done a nice job recovering from poor qualifying efforts. But at the same time, if you're not making it out of Q2 or even Q1 in a car that Max Verstappen's won 8 of the first 10 races with, the last 6 in a row, the only times he hasn't won was when Perez beat him and won those 2 races himself. It's certainly not a great look, and you can't make excuses for it. And, we were talking about de Vries this entire segment here and how he only got 10 races to prove himself. This is Sergio Perez's 3rd season in the Red Bull. And as Kobe mentioned, maybe this is a sign of just how dominant that car is. He's still 2nd in points. It's not like he's 2nd in points hanging on by a thread. He's got a 19-point advantage right now over Fernando Alonso, from what I can tell. So it's almost a full race that he's got a buffer to Alonso. I suppose if Alonso won a race and Perez wasn't in the points, then he'd overtake him for 2nd in the championship. But it's crazy, like Kobe mentioned, that we're talking about a guy who's comfortably 2nd in the championship right now, and maybe his seat isn't safe. But that just speaks to how dominant that car is. But again, I don't know. I think of Sergio Perez, and I thought of Valtteri Bottas the same way as well at Mercedes. I think of them as like the perfect number 2 drivers, because on their best day, they can go out and they can get you a win here or there. They can be a comfortable 2nd driver in that car that's going to perform reliably, all right, and good enough to the point where you don't have to be concerned about winning the constructors if you're a dominant team that year. But they're never going to challenge the Lewis Hamiltons and the Max Verstappens of the world for a world championship over the course of a full season. And that's why, personally, I think Nico Rosberg is one of the more underrated drivers of our generation, because he did beat Lewis Hamilton in 2016 over the course of a full season for a world championship. That's something Valtteri Bottas and now Sergio Perez really haven't come very close to doing with the opportunities that they've been given to match their legendary teammates here. So I do feel a little bit for Sergio Perez, because I think he's done better in that car than Gasly did or Albon did before him. He's won a handful of races here and there. But at the same time, if you're struggling to make Q3 in a car that is so dominant that Max Verstappen's doing what he's doing, and that Daniel Ricciardo reportedly would have been on the front row, having not sat in a Formula One car the entire first half of the year, he's got to get his act together, because like we mentioned at the start of the show, this is a ruthless driver program here at Red Bull. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a seasoned veteran. Helmut Marko and his company over at Red Bull, they're not going to hesitate to make moves if they see fit. So that's going to be interesting to follow as the season goes on here. Hopefully for Checo's sake, he can turn it around. Rod Brown asked, where will Hello go? Aston, if anywhere. Again, I feel like maybe McLaren would have an opening for him if Lando Norris decides maybe I want to pursue a more competitive seat somewhere else. Piastri had a great run this weekend. Who knows what's going to happen with him? But I don't know. I mean, I guess Fernando Alonso is certainly closer to the end of his career than the beginning, but he's kind of carrying that team right now with Lance Stroll, and we know Stroll's not losing his seat. So I don't know if Aston's a realistic option, at least anytime in the near future.
I tell you, Palou's smart. Where he will go is victory lane multiple more times than the NTT IndyCar Series.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got much more to add to that. I've been saying Lando Norris is going to Audi when they come, so there'll be a seat open at McLaren if Palou wants to just keep winning races and IndyCar championships until that happens. Then that's fine by me.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think Alex Palou would be best to actually stay where he is right now at Chip Ganassi Racing. It seems like there might be an opportunity to make that happen based on what we've been hearing in the media and all of that. If both sides are able to come to an agreement, stay together, I think they can win many more IndyCar races and championships for years to come. I'm not sure if you're an Alex Palou, unless you're going to be in a seat capable of competing for points at the bare minimum. Why would you want to leave a good situation where you're the top IndyCar driver right now by far, and you're just absolutely destroying the competition and experiencing a lot of great moments that he'll remember forever? I don't really see why he'd want to go to Formula One, just to run outside the points all the time and to eventually get dumped and return to IndyCar years later. I think if Pelot's smart, he'll stay in IndyCar right now. But if a really good seat opens up and it's like a really good one, then I think he should take the opportunity to go to Formula One then, because you may not get another chance to go to Formula One.
He doesn't want to do the same thing as Sebastian Bourdais. Was dominant for years. Okay, there was the IndyCar reformation and things changed, and he ended up at Toro Rosso for a year and a half, and we've talked a lot about Toro Rosso tonight. Matthew says Pelot should stay in IndyCar. Right now, his focus needs to be on winning the 500. He came close twice already, and he's just a handful of attempts. Lots of people talking about Pelot, and we keep being told he's not allowed to talk to anybody until September. So people can talk to each other. Let's see what happens in the next 2 months, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Matthew's right on point there. You guys are right on point. I think Pelot's best option is the status quo. He's won, 4 of the last 5 IndyCar races, I think, and was in contention to win the Indy 500 until he had the problem in the pits, and then nearly drove back through the field and got back into contention anyway. So I think why would you break up a good thing to, even if McLaren improve on where they've been, they had great pace this weekend. Don't get me wrong. It's great to see them taking that step forward, but again, I don't see how anybody other than Max Verstappen's winning a world championship anytime in the near future with the current regulations and how dominant Red Bull have been this year. It seems to me that it's going to take some time for the McLarens, the Ferraris, the Mercedes of the world to catch up to them and match their pace. So if I'm Alex Pelot, it might be nice to run an FP1 session here or there, but I think in terms of my day job, I'd like to stay winning races and competing for the Indianapolis 500 of the IndyCar Series.
Yeah, I have to agree. Well, Ben, thank you for joining us. We're going to transition into some IndyCar news, and we've just been talking about it, so it's a good place to transition across to that. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Matt. And before I go, I know I looked ahead of the script. I know you guys are going to talk about it briefly later on. The Hall of Fame nominees for NASCAR Class 24 released today. I just want to get my picks real quick. The 1-2 punch for the modern era ballot has to be Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus, because Jimmy's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a don't need a ballot Hall of Famer. And how can you not put Chad Knaus in there at the same time with him? So everybody else on the modern ballot, I think you're going to have to wait, unfortunately, at least until 2025. And then on the Pioneer ballot, I understand the argument for AJ Foyt, but I just don't know if his NASCAR stats alone are enough to justify putting him in the Hall of Fame. So I'm going to go with Sam Ard. I think he's somebody that should have gone in a while ago, and I think we need a little bit more representation of non-Cup Series names in the Hall of Fame. So Sam Ard is my pick for the Pioneer ballot.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Right. Thank you, Ben. And we will transition into some IndyCar news, which has come out today. They're heading to Toronto at the weekend, but Simon Pagenaud will not be. He will miss this Sunday's NTT IndyCar Series race in Canada following that violent practice crash he had on Saturday morning at Mid-Ohio, which ended in a series of barrel rolls. Pagenaud was reevaluated this week by the IndyCar medical team, and they don't think he is ready to return to racing quite yet. In the statement, which you can see here on screen from Simon, he says he feels good, but he's still recovering and plans to listen to the professionals so he can get back into the number 60 Meyer Shank Racing Honda as soon as possible. Replacing Pagenaud in Toronto is another MSR driver who is a part of Team Acura's GTP program in IMSA, and that man is Tom Blomqvist. He tested for the team at the end of last season, and he will make his IndyCar Series debut this weekend, the half Brit, half Kiwi. We've talked a lot about Kiwis on the network over the last couple of weeks. We've got another one making a debut in an American Series this weekend. Last weekend, the Meyer Shank Racing team, of which Tom is part, won the IMSA race at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Tom taking pole position and winning the race alongside Colin Braun. We'll talk about IMSA a little bit further on in the show, but Blomqvist will get to race for a second week in Canada this weekend, switching across to Toronto. Co-owner Mike Shank said the decision to put Blomqvist in the car was a fairly easy one, and he has plenty of confidence in his sports car driver, graphic courtesy of Meyer Shank Racing. Blomqvist went on to post this tweet saying, diving straight into the deep end, wishing Simon a speedy recovery and hoping he can get back behind the wheel soon. I'd like to thank Mike and Jim at MSR for this opportunity in IndyCar. It's going to be one heck of a challenge, and we will go out there, soak it all in, and give it my all. So, guys, we'll start with you, Kobe. What should we expect from Blomqvist this weekend in his IndyCar debut, and could this also be an audition for him to get a full-time race seat potentially with the team in 2024?
Well, Matt, I think it's really interesting timing here of Tom Blomqvist's IndyCar debut, because you remember just on last week's show, we were talking about Nathan Brown's article from the Indy Star saying that Meyer-Shank Racing has already finalized one of their 2 seats for next year, which is expected. Well, that one confirmed seat is expected to be announced by the end of August. I wonder who that driver could be. Could it be the driver making his debut in the number 60 Honda this weekend, or could it be re-upping with Helio Castroneves or Simon Pagenaud? Who knows? But I certainly think Tom Blomqvist is definitely a really great option here for Meyer-Shank Racing, and we've seen how well he does in sports car racing. It seems like Tom Blomqvist is one of the fastest sports car drivers on the planet right now from any category. And then he got to test during the offseason with Meyer-Shank Racing, and he was very impressive in the IndyCar. You know, he does have a lot of open wheel experience, raced in Formula E, Formula 3, so he understands the style of racing. But it's still going to be, like he said, it's going to be a challenge for him to jump right in during the middle of the IndyCar season to try to go out there and be competitive. But looking at the Meyer-Shank Racing IndyCar program as a whole, we've been talking about them a lot throughout the year and the struggles that they're having. So I think if Tom Blomqvist goes out there and overperforms in his debut, he gives the car a better finish than a Helio Castroneves or Simon Pagenaud would have done, then I think that's definitely going to raise his stock up a little bit. And I think if there's an opportunity for him to potentially go full-time in IndyCar, I think Tom Blomqvist would definitely take it. So I think coming to the streets of Toronto, his goal is probably going to be just run all the laps. No, don't put a wheel wrong, and just do the best he can. See if he can try to overperform in a car that's truly been struggling a lot this season. So he very well should consider this an audition for 2024.
Yeah, very much. You know, and you mentioned that Tom Blomqvist has an impressive resume in sports cars. I mean, he was a part of, 2 different 24 Hours at Daytona teams. And I mean, he's young, he's capable, he's done well in the tests. Is everything going for him? So I'm very curious to see how it's going to be this weekend driving in place of Simon Pagenaud. I don't think we'll see anything spectacular. I think we'll see a very good performance out of him, though. I mean, a capable driver, kind of getting his feet wet. And could it be an audition for next season? Certainly. I think so, especially with what we've talked about with how it seems like the 2 rides we don't know which one is kind of unstable right now. If both are unstable or what's going on over there. Apparently one ride is finalized, like we've heard, but this could be a great opportunity for him to prove his chops and I think really expose himself to, I think, just a wider audience as well. Not saying IMSA doesn't get a lot of people, but I'm saying like to more of an IndyCar audience to prove his talent and show what he's capable of in these cars.
This has got all the potential of, maybe not so much of the Van Gisbergen effect from a couple of weeks ago, doesn't it? Some, IndyCar fans maybe not so au fait with Tom Blomqvist comes in and does well. I'm not saying he's going to win at Toronto. Of course, that's going to be a big challenge for him. He's never been there as far as I can think of. So it'll be a brand new track for him. Here's a potential scenario I've kind of just been thinking of while you two guys have been chatting. Maybe this is an audition and he gets the ride and there's a switch and Pagenaud goes full time in the 60 with Colin Braun, and then Helio Castroneves continues as the endurance driver. And if Helio isn't in IndyCar full time, Mike Shank needs to keep putting him in a car, and Matthew Owens, who is watching, will agree with me, until he gets the 5th. Every single year he needs to be at Indianapolis, at least giving it his best to try and break the record. So maybe there could be a little switcheroo there. And also someone we were talking about a little while ago, Nyck de Vries. There was some talk a few months back about the Acura Wayne Taylor Andretti team running a second car alongside the 10. So maybe a Pagenaud de Vries tie-up could be on the cards in the second Acura Andretti Wayne Taylor car. We'll have to see how that pans out, and good luck to Tom this weekend at Toronto. Staying stateside, and we switch to NASCAR, where Busch Light have announced a new multi-year partnership with Trackhouse Racing and Ross Chastain, which will start at the beginning of next year. Busch Light will exit Stewart-Haas Racing at the end of 2023 after sponsoring the retiring Kevin Harvick who's been an Anheuser-Busch driver since 2011 through the Budweiser and Busch Light brands. Chastain said, Busch Light has always been the beer of choice for all of their celebrations on the watermelon farm down in Florida. He called it a dream come true to be sponsored by the official beer of NASCAR, and likes how they support a community close to his heart, humble and hardworking people who enjoy cracking a cold one after an honest day's work. Please drink responsibly. The beer brand is also involved with the Busch Light Pole Award every week and the Busch Light Clash at the LA Coliseum, graphic courtesy of Trackhouse. Another big week of news for Trackhouse Racing. Jonathan, how do you think this Chastain and Busch Light deal is going to go? Is it a good fit, and how difficult will it be to replace someone like Kevin Harvick as the brand ambassador for them?
Difficult, but I think the fit is like a match made in heaven, really. I mean, when you talk about Kevin Harvick and Busch Light, Busch Beer, you talk about a championship duo. I mean, Busch has been around for a long time with Busch, Budweiser, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Of course, you go back to the days of Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip, and others. And Ross Chastain is just a natural fit in the lineage. I mean, he's done a lot of exciting things on the track. Maybe he's made some people mad, but he has shown his talent. He's been capable. And I think Busch wants a part of that. And also, you know, I know it was a very PR statement that, you know, oh, hey, you know, we all crack open a cold one. But honestly, like, that's a very honest statement from Ross Chastain. He's a working class driver. His story has been well detailed of how he came up. You know, his mom is still working as a nurse, you know, and his family works on a watermelon farm. I mean, it's just a great story all around that really fits with who Busch is trying to, you know, appeal to and who Busch fits with. So just a great combo. And it also, too, I mean, as a fan, you have to be thinking about all the possibilities that are going to come from this partnership, namely Busch Light Watermelon. Maybe we'll see something like that with Ross Chastain getting to roll that out. Maybe he'll pour some Busch into a little watermelon slice, you know, and he breaks it on the front straightaway. I mean, this is just a great partnership that I think is going to carry Chastain into the future, is going to carry Busch into the future. And also, too, I think it's great that there's a sponsor that is choosing to go to a different driver who's really standing out and just isn't saying, okay, you know, our driver's done, we're done with the sport.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to see them continuing. That did smack of much PR, didn't it? Chastain, ever since I was a small boy, I've always wanted to be sponsored by the NASCAR official beer. Rod says, imagine the promo if they get SVG back for a road race coming up. Would surely be a marketing boom for NASCAR. I agree. I can't wait to see what they do with Ross and Busch, who have been, you know, they've put some really good advertising together over the last couple of years with their bits and pieces that we see on the broadcast and through the coverage. Matthew, agreeing with you, watermelon flavored Busch, you can see a cup-shaped watermelon with a straw coming out, and it's Busch and all that kind of thing going on in the adverts in the beginning of next season. In all seriousness, this is an enormous deal for Trackhouse. The amount of things they've done on and off the track in just a few years is phenomenal. Agreed. As I said before, it's another massive news story for Trackhouse. Yeah, he needs to be at the Indianapolis until 60. Yeah, well, until he wins 5, and then he can absolutely mic drop and walk out of there as the king of the speedway, as we've talked about multiple times. Before we move on, because I wasn't on the show last week and we're talking Trackhouse, how amazing was SVG last week? That was sensational. Adam says Samar deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Harry Gant as well. Yeah, can't disagree with either of those. I agree with Ben with my Hall of Fame picks from the ballot. Actually, I think we're both on the same page there. But that kind of breaks up this segment. Jonathan, over to you for some IMSA news.
Yeah, so something a little bit different, and we're going to talk about, of course, NASCAR's sister series, I guess you could say. So a brief recap of the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship race from Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Meyershank Racing was fast in practice. They took the pole and completed the weekend sweep by winning the Chevrolet Grand Prix. The race ended under a full course caution behind the safety car after the number 01 Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac of Ranger van der Zende crashed out hard in the tire barriers. This was Meyershank Racing's first race win for the number 60 Acura ARX 06. Tom Blomqvist, who we just talked about, Colton Brown, who we just talked about as well. Since the Rolex 24 Daytona post-race penalty, huge deal. Obviously, that's still on Michael Shank's mind. He dedicated this win to the team and the family and his business partner, Jim Meyer, after a lot of people said a lot of nasty things about them all after Daytona. Of course, the photo is courtesy of Meyer Shank Racing. So I want to throw it back to you guys. Kobe, so would you consider this win as sort of a moment of healing for the Meyer Shank Racing team after facing all the fallout that they did at Daytona?
Yeah, I know y'all were just talking about beer, but I'm sure after this one, Michael Shank and the rest of the team cracked open a cold one. I'm not sure if it was Busch Light though, but yeah, this team has really been through a lot this year. Jonathan, you mentioned the post race penalty at Daytona. We covered it here on this show. Absolutely killed them in the championship, but they didn't take away the Rolex 24 victory after they were caught by Acura with tire manipulation data, and it really hurt the reputation of Meyer Shank Racing and all of those nasty things that Michael Shank is talking about, that his organization, that they were labeled as cheaters, someone who didn't play by the rules at all. And when situations like that happen, then you question all of their other victories as well in them. So like, people are going to be saying that they win those fairly. Did they manipulate the tire data there as well? And so I'm sure Mike Shank has heard it all a lot. And then we remember the scathing comments from his Acura teammate Wayne Taylor Racing, who definitely has no filter at all, talking about how trust had been broken between the two Acura teams, Meyer Shank Racing and then Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport, which was super unfortunate there. And besides that, season hasn't really gone as well for Meyer Shank Racing. To get this win in Canada after all the fall in Daytona, I'm sure it really, really feels good, and they're going to try to move forward from what happened at Daytona. I remember when they showed up to Sebring, like everybody's looking at them, with a scowl on their face. People very frustrated that they didn't get the win taken away since they didn't win it fairly there. So, and as time has went on during the season, it really seems like that all of the anger directed at Meyer Shank Racing has slowly went away. And I think that this win at Canadian Tire Motorsports part of the final nail in the coffin, that now we can officially move on from what happened at Daytona and focus on what's ahead for the remainder of the season. Still have a few more races to go in them to see what they can do at Road America, the next race for GTP. Then you got the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course and Road Atlanta, the Petit Le Mans at the end of the year.
Yeah, it was good for them to get kind of the monkey off the back, I guess, after that Daytona story. Kind of echo what Kobe said, really. A lot of things have been said. And since Daytona, they haven't really been fighting at the front until this weekend. They've had various dramas and accidents and been involved in things. And just simply not had the pace in a couple of races. But, maybe the Le Mans break did them good, and they were on the pace at Watkins Glen. Didn't come up with a victory a couple of weeks ago, but here they are in victory lane. So yeah, let's see if they can kick on from this, and if they can win all of those remaining races and other things happen around them, maybe by some stroke of imagination they can be in the championship hunt. Then we shall see. Adam with a comment says, Matt, will Brody Kostecki compete at the IMS road course with RCR? Yes, story coming out just quickly before we go back to the results of the IMSA race. Story coming out from Auto Action in Australia this morning that Brody Kostecki is going to be at IMS on the road course in the Cup Series in a couple of weeks. I would imagine in the car that Austin Hill ran last week at Atlanta for RCR. So not yet confirmed, but it's in the pipeline. So we might see yet another supercars driver dipping his toe into Cup Series waters. And Brody, no stranger to NASCAR, of course, because he competed in the K&N Series a few years ago before heading back to Australia.
Yeah, certainly. And I just want to go back to what you're talking about with Meyer Shank Racing. It's like any great sports team. When they're down on their luck, You have to look to your past successes and just know that that's going to carry you forward. Talk about the New England Patriots. We've heard all about Deflategate, different things, cheating, alleged cheating, things like that. Even Ross Chastain, who we talked about before, of how after Darlington, he had Rick Hendrick breathing down his neck. But he dug his heels in, got better, got back to the top. So we're seeing it again with Meyershank Racing. But they were not the only winners up in Canada this weekend. Of course, take a look at our other class winners. In LMP3, the race was decided when two front runners made contact. Felipe Frega muscled his way by Garrett Grist to give the number 74 Riley Motorsports Ligier the victory for Frega and his co-driver Gar Robinson. It was a big day for Corvette Racing as well. They won GTD Pro with Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor. And then over at Monza, they clinched the LMGTE AM title. A job well done this season by Ben Keating, Nicky Katzberg, and Nico Barone. And then in GTD, the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW, Brian Sellers and Madison Snow picked up their 3rd win of the season. And of course, the next IMSA race will take place Saturday, July 22nd. It is a GT only race. GTD Pro and GTD will compete in the Northeast Grand Prix at Lime Rock Park. And now we got Matt White here with our latest grid index update.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. The Endurance Performance Index. It was a busy weekend last weekend, along with that IMSA race, which you've just given us the winners for. Most of the action actually happened in Germany. It was all busy down there over the weekend. On Saturday, the latest round of the Nürburgring Langstrecke Series was run and won by Joel Eriksson and David Pittard. Congratulations to them. At the Norris Ring, the street track, we had the latest rounds of both DTM and the ADAC GT Masters. In DTM, Sheldon van der Linde, last year's champion, got a victory on Saturday. Thomas Preining winning for Porsche on Sunday. And in the GT Masters races, Salman Awega and Elias Seppanen won on Saturday. And Yanis Fitcher and Nico Menzel won the Sunday race. At Estoril, we had the latest round of Creventic. They had a 12-hour race there. Win for an Audi team, Leo Weiss, George Weiss, Jochen Krumbach and Torsten Kratz from the AM category, winning overall in that one. And you mentioned there was a race at Monza, the latest round of the World Endurance Championship. I watched all 6 hours of that on Sunday. It was a terrific race, won by Toyota, getting a bounce back after their disappointment at Le Mans. Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi and Jose Maria Lopez winning overall for car number 7. In the Prototype 2 category, David Hennemeyer Hansen, Ollie Rasmussen and Pietro Fittipaldi were the winners. And GTE AM was won by Christian Reed, Mikkel Pedersen and Julian Anblauer for Porsche. So there is the top 10 on week 14 of the grid EPI. And we have a little bit of a shuffle at the top because car 8 Toyota had a terrible day. We'll get to it in knots later. But Sebastian Buemi and Ryo Hirakawa, who were above Brendan Hartley, have now shuffled around him because of Brendan's extra race that he ran and came second at Daytona at the beginning of the year. That's why the points are different, and that puts Brendan Hartley back to the top of the standings. And as Jonathan mentioned, Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor, they go up into the top 10, after getting their first win of the year for Corvette Racing at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park at the weekend. Kamui Kobayashi there and Mike Conway popping themselves up into the top 10 with their win at the weekend. So Kobayashi, another man that's going to be at IMS in a couple of weeks' time in the Cup Series. So we're going to have another, like we had at COTA back in the spring, another influx of internationals heading to NASCAR. But that's how we stand in the grid EPI for this week. There is the top 50. Spot your favourite driver if you can. Another busy weekend coming this weekend with GT World Challenge. The European Championship heads to Misano for their latest sprint round. The Asian Series is at Suzuka. Another round of ADAC GT Masters are there at the Nürburgring. And the latest round of the European Le Mans Series after their long break. They've only had one race so far this season, and then we have Le Mans, of course. They're at Paul Ricard on Sunday. Adam says Norris Ring, a very cool track, one of my favourites. It is mine too. Can't wait to look and see how those races went down at the weekend. So 4 more events to come this coming weekend on what's actually a fairly quiet weekend in terms of international action. It all seems to be happening in the EPI, and we'll bring you the results of it on next week's show. back to you, Kobe, for some more news.
Yeah, thanks, man. Earlier today, the nominees for the NASCAR Hall of Fame class of 2024 was announced, with 10 people on the modern era ballot and 5 on the pioneer ballot. And starting with the modern era ballot, Neil Bonnet, 18-time NASCAR Cup Series winner, which included consecutive victories in the Coca-Cola 600. Tim Brewer, 2-time NASCAR Cup Series championship winning crew chief. Jeff Burton, 21-time NASCAR Cup Series race winner, which included the Southern 500 and 2 Coca-Cola 600s. Carl Edwards, 28-time NASCAR Cup Series winner and the 2007 Xfinity Series champion. Harry Gant, also known as Mr. September, an 18-time NASCAR Cup Series winner, which included a pair of wins in the Southern 500. Harry Hyde, the 1970 NASCAR Cup Series championship winning crew chief. Jimmy Johnson, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. And then his longtime partner in the Cup Series, Chad Canal, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series championship winning crew chief. Larry Phillips, first 5-time NASCAR Weekly Series national champion. Ricky Rudd, 23-time NASCAR Cup Series race winner, which included the 1997 Brickyard 400. Now here's the 5 nominees on the Pioneer ballot. Donnie Allison, 10-time NASCAR Cup Series winner, which includes the 1967 Rookie of the Year award. Sam Ard, 2-time NASCAR Xfinity Series champion. AJ Foyt, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series race winner, which included the 1972 Daytona 500. Banjo Matthews, he built cars that won more than 250 races in the NASCAR Cup Series and ended up winning 3 championships there. Ralph Moody, 2-time NASCAR Cup Series championship winning owner as a mechanical genius of Holman Moody. And for all our viewers watching, let us know down in the chat, who'd be your 2 nominees from the modern ballot and your 1 nominee from the Pioneer ballot if you were going in to vote this August for next year's NASCAR Hall of Fame class. NASCAR Xfinity Series regular Sheldon Creed will make his Cup Series debut later this year at Kansas Speedway. Creed will drive the number 78 Chevrolet Camaro for Live Fast Motorsports with sponsorship from Whelen Engineering, his same sponsor in Xfinity. And in 54 career Xfinity starts, Creed has 6 top 5s, 20 top 10s, and 1 pole position. He's currently in his 2nd full season in Xfinity with Richard Childress Racing at the moment. With the number of races winding down until the playoffs, Creed currently sits 10th in points, 26 points above the cut line. Graphic courtesy of Live Fast Motorsports. And now I'm going to throw it over to Matt for everyone's favorite game, Pick a Winner.
Yes, the Grid Network prediction game is back for another week. I was quite happy to get a couple of points at the weekend, but Kobe still has the lead. He is 2 points clear of Alex there at the top of the standings, 29 points to 27. As you can see, I am 7th. Josh, not with us this week, is 9th. Where is Jonathan on the list?
Yeah, I was asking myself that too. I don't see myself on there. That's not good.
Uh-oh. Well, chance to score this week. We've got plenty of Pick a Winner chances, and it starts tomorrow, isn't it, with the first round of SRX at Stafford Speedway. That's going to be our first Pick a Winner race for the show this week, and you can get your picks in using hashtag Pick a Winner and tagging the Grid Network on all of the social media platforms, including Fred's. I am going to go with Ryan Newman as my Stafford winner tomorrow night. Kobe, what say you?
They got a stacked field for Stafford. Oh, I'm not really sure who I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna go with one of the NASCAR Cup Series regulars. I say give me Denny Hamlin.
Ooh, yeah, I would agree that you're gonna see a Cup regular get a win. But I don't think it's going to be the one that you guys think. I think it's going to be Brad Keselowski. I think he breaks through, finally gets that first win of the season, gets it done, SRX.
That would open him up to some... he had a good run at Atlanta, didn't he, last weekend? And that would open him up to another track where he's gone well at, which is New Hampshire, coming up this weekend. You'll be able to pick your winner for that on the social media. We'll talk about that over the weekend. And over the weekend, Formula E is back. They've only got 4 races to go in their season, and we talked about it coming out of Portland. The championship is extremely tight. Double header at Rome this weekend, one of the best tracks on the calendar. I've got the chance to go and pick first. I thought about this earlier on, but I think I'm going to change my mind. Earlier in my mind, I had Mitch Evans to win, but I think I'm going to go with Jake Dennis to win on Saturday in Rome.
Yeah, got a comment there from Adam Limmery said that his pick for SRX at Stafford is the Rocket Man himself, Ryan Newman. And you can also catch Ryan Newman racing this weekend in the NASCAR Cup Series at New Hampshire, making his return to that number to that Rick Ware racing Ford Mustang. And my pick for Formula E Race 1 on the streets of Rome, Matt, the driver you decide not to go with, that's the one I had in mind. So we'll see how that goes. I think we're going to see Jaguar drive on the top step of the podium. Give me Mitch Evans.
Ooh, all right. You're going to leave Nick Cassidy on the table. I'll take him. Nick Cassidy for Formula E.
That's 3 of the 4 championship contenders picked for then. I hope if a Jaguar wins, it's Sam Bird, because he's had such a terrible season, and it'd be a shame for him not to go another year without a win. Adam is picking Jake Dennis as well, so we've double up on our picks with Newman and Dennis. Adam, we are tied at the hip there for our picks for the weekend. I'm disappointed not to be on the show because I missed Hots and Knots last week, so I've got a little bit of a laundry list really of Hots and Knots from this weekend. We'll start with Hots, Jonathan. I've got a couple. McLaren back at the front, excellent. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri on the podium. That was fabulous. The British crowd at the British Grand Prix just has to be mentioned, only because it's half an hour away from where I'm sat right now. The WEC race I mentioned was great. Supercars again at Townsville was very, very good. Kai Allen is going to be a star in Super 2. He won the first race and ran out of tyres in race 2 and ended up coming second behind Zach Best. More on Kai Allen in the next couple of weeks. We'll hopefully talk about that on the show. And Atlanta, wasn't it brilliant on Sunday night? Tyler Reddick's save, that's the save of the season in all categories. Well done, Tyler Reddick. What a save that was.
Absolutely. I have no clue how he saved it in the dog leg there. That almost reminded me of I think it was Clint Boyer back in 2011 when he saved it at Texas when he's going through lap traffic, or I think it was Christopher Bell in the 600. Just amazing driving. My hots and knots, though, I think I'll stick with Atlanta. RFK Racing, I mean, they have been quietly consistent all season long. But at Atlanta, I mean, they were some of the best cars out there. And Brad Keselowski nearly got it done. So I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but I would say the knot would be Colleague Racing on the Saturday night race. Just you could just tell on pit road after the race that Daniel Hemrick was just in a different world than Justin Haley, absolutely dejected after Haley tried side drafting him and going for the win instead of helping him out. That's a big knot. Another hot, William Byron. I mean, 4 wins on the season. He's not fallen into that summer slump that he usually gets into. Obviously, we'll have to see how he progresses throughout the playoffs, because he was good in 2021 and then the playoffs hit and he wasn't as good. So we'll have to see there. Another hot, Corey Heim as well. Ran very well at Mid-Ohio. Just some of the driving in the rain was very interesting to watch, but I think the big knot has to go to Sean Hingorani. I know we've been over this a lot. A lot of people have raked him through the coals. I will give him the benefit of his youth. He's young. He has to learn. This is just another step, but not the best move on his part.
I have a question about that because I've only seen the clip of the of the crash. Was he ahead in the running order and waited for them to catch him up?
So what happened was
he a lap down?
Yeah, so he and Dean Thompson were racing. I think it was for the lead, and basically off the Hingorani was beating Thompson's back bumper off. Finally, Hingorani drove it in there hard. Thompson shoved him wide. He got into the sand. He finally got out of the sand. He kept going, but he was way behind the pack. And as ARCA ruled, he slowed down, waited for him. I mean, all these laps are run under green. Slowed down, waited for him, and then that incident happened.
Yeah, not good. I've got a couple of knots, which are, one is WEC related. Sebastian Buemi started the 8 Toyota. He turned around a Ferrari at the very first corner at Monza, the chicane, got himself a time penalty. He then crashed into, while lapping, the D-Station Aston Martin and fenced him at the way up to Ascari. I don't know if the car's a write-off. If it wasn't, it was very close. It was a big accident for Satoru Hoshino, and they were out on the spot. And the engineer came on the radio and said, "We've seen the replay and you didn't touch him." Well, the Aston Martin's here. wrong way on the camera, and the Toyota just comes across and wipes him out. So how the Toyota misdiagnosed that as contact or no contact is beyond me. And my other knot from the week was as much as I enjoyed Atlanta, the early portion of the race was mainly in the first stage. From the commentary, was how they kept saying that everyone's being aggressive because the rain was coming.
Mm.
You don't need to be aggressive in stage one with the rain rule. Well, it doesn't mean anything, does it? You just need to be there after halfway. So yes, they were being aggressive, and it was really entertaining to watch. But I don't think that had anything to do with, and they just kept dragging that up on Sunday, which was really, really strange. Casey, hello, Casey. One of the most bizarre things we've ever seen was that thing at Mid-Ohio. Yeah, well, that was a bit of a shocker.
Well, one thing I want to say just though about the Atlanta thing is, I don't think anybody knew when that race was going to end. Obviously, it was going to end after halfway because NASCAR rules and whatnot. But I mean, with how hard it's been to pass with that package, like at Talladega, the drivers talked about it. I'm not making that up. Drivers have talked about it, how hard it was to pass to get position, toward the front of the field, especially with how racy the track was. I think was a big thing because I mean, once the good cars get up front of me, it's hard to pass. So I mean, I'm not complaining when they're racing hard, and I think it was definitely because of the rain, but yeah.
The only disappointing thing about how that ended was they were already under caution when the rain came. That was the disappointing thing for me, because you could have had it's raining countdown, like it'll be here in 2 laps, and then whoever ends up in the lead when the rain actually hit, rather than being under yellow. Before we hand back to Kobe to take us out, I did mention in the grid chat that I would come back with A1 Grand Prix news after my holiday. I have it, but I'm going to save it for next week.
Ooh,
stay tuned.
Cliffhanger.
More A1 Grand Prix news coming next week. Joe, if you're watching, I'm going to send you a message tomorrow about it before we talk about it on the air.
Really, like as Jonathan said, Matt, you left everyone with a cliffhanger. That's why you need to come back every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time for Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. And now taking a look at our upcoming schedule for this week. Saturday, back on the air, Grid Live pre-race, noon Eastern, and Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up. Finally, back at a normal hour. It's been really weird these last 3 Sunday nights with the NASCAR Cup races running on Sunday night. So we'll be back on the air 90 minutes after NASCAR and IndyCar finish up at New Hampshire and Toronto. And then on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, Grid Live Encore, a full recap of Xfinity at New Hampshire, ARCA at Iowa, and a lot more. And Joe's right here in the chat. Maddie saying, "That sounds like
I do."
And also, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for helping us reach our milestone of 600 subscribers. About to reach a new milestone. Now when we started this, we were at 248. I mean, not 248, 648 subscribers. About to reach our 650 subscribers. So thank you so much. And if you're a first-time Grid Network viewer, like what you saw tonight, please hit that button, like and subscribe to us so you don't miss any of our programs here at Grid Network. And by doing that, you can help us reach our new goal of 600. Oh my God, I can't even get the numbers right tonight. It's been such a long show, but reach our new goal of 700 subscribers on the road to the iconic number of 1,000. Follow all our social media platforms and visit gridranking.com. Consider taking 5 minutes after our show tonight to invest in Grid Network through Patreon. You can join Colin, Mark, Deschelle, Robin, and David investing each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join the amazing group of people who keep us on the air. Once we reach $500 per month, we can start expanding our coverage by adding new members to the team and having our team on site to cover more races. Link in the video description below. And if you want to do a one-time donation, click on the link to buy me a coffee. You can get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. Consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you right here on the air. We're out of time for tonight. So for Ben Snyder, Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, and Jonathan Fiel from the Racing Experts, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.